in Colorado, Mayor, because you chose this place to launch your big gun initiative. And I'm wondering, as I sat there looking at the families, hearing the families, because they have heard this before, we're going to do it, we're going to get it done, there will be some changes. Why do you think you're different this time?
I understand the problem. You have to go and look at the victims before you can really understand what they're going through, the emotional problems they have, the financial problems. Somebody in your family gets killed. How do you take care of everybody? Who's going to take care of the kids? Who pays for the funeral? Part of the answer is you got to go out and look at the problem rather than just talk about it in an academic sense. I think if you take a look at what we did in New York City in 12 years, cut the murder rate in half, cut the number of young people incarcerated in jails in half, brought back those who were incarcerated from prisons way upstate where the families couldn't visit them to back where the families can help you adjust them to re-entry into the real world when they get out. We've done all of this, and we need to scale this up across the country. But we just don't need another speech. Mm-hmm. We don't need another program. In fact, I don't even think you need that much money. We always used to be millions, now we throw billions at everything. It's a problem of it's like in education. Technology's great, but you need a good teacher looking the student in the eye and empathizing with the student and building a relationship. Same thing is true in solving lots of other societal problems, one of which is guns. You've got to be able to go to the legislature and convince them, at least argue with them, at least ask them to participate and say, look, here's why you should do it. It's leadership, and we don't seem to have that when it comes to guns. You had the NRA, which was the leader. The NRA has basically been beaten. We've gone, and they've lost most of their funding sources. Their top management is in chaos.
You think you can work with the NRA?
No, but I think you can avoid the NRA, or you can beat them. I tried to reach out to them many years ago when I first got into City Hall.
So you intend to work around the NRA, is what you're saying?
Well, I think you just don't make much of the NRA. You don't have to go talk to them at all.
We're in a state where, people embrace their guns here. How do you convince people in a state, a swing state, by the way, that gun control is the answer? How do you do that?
We're not trying to convince them of gun control. Those are the wrong words, and I think this has become so hard because we use words like that.
Well, if we don't use the term gun control, what should we use?
We want to have background checks. We want to have restrictions on who can buy only in the following sense. Nobody who's a minor, nobody who has psychiatric problems, nobody who has a criminal record should be allowed to buy a gun. And in fact, there's a federal law that says you can't buy a gun if you fit any of those three categories at any gun store across America, all 50 states. And most gun dealers honor that law.
Yet the shootings continue, Mayor.
Because there's found other places to sell guns on the internet and at gun shows. That's where the people that get the guns that shouldn't have them go, because there is no background check. Why is there none? Because when the law was written to put background checks in, the internet didn't exist and gun shows didn't exist.
Why is this issue so important to you?
Because too many people are getting killed. It is a calamity across the country, particularly in poorer neighborhoods. We are better than that. America is a country that, we're not perfect. We've had plenty of things in our background that we should be ashamed of. But we are a country that's compassionate, and we can do better.
Is it different, Mayor, working with the New York City Council, the New York legislature, than it would be working with Congress, and working with a divided Congress, and working with a polarized nation?
Well, number one, the head person's job is to pull people together. That's one of the reasons why I think that Donald Trump is totally unsuited to be president of the United States. He does not have the instincts of pulling people together. He prides himself in dividing them. The president of the United States, last time I checked the Constitution, is supposed to be the president of the whole country, no matter whether you wear a blue tie or a red tie, no matter where in the country you live.
I want to talk about you getting in the race, because when you were on CBS This Morning in September...
Are you sitting here going, I wish I had done it?
No, I never think back. There was not a road for me when Joe was in the race to get through. because we would have split the votes.
What happened between September and now?
I looked at our national government getting worse, the way we're behaving overseas and domestically, led by our president. I said back in 2016, he is the wrong person for the job. He doesn't have the temperament or the ethics, the intellect to do the job. And I watched and I said, we just can't have another 4 years of this. And then I watched all the candidates, and I just thought to myself, Donald Trump would eat him up.
You think all of the candidates who are running today, he would eat them up?
Let me rephrase it. I think that I would do the best job of competing with him and beating him.
One of the other things you said in September was that Joe Biden is a friend. Did you talk to Joe Biden ahead of time to say I'm getting in?
No, I did not. His staff certainly knew.
Do you still consider him a friend?
Yeah, sure. Why would he not be?
I don't know. I'm thinking with friends like you, who needs enemies?
You are friendly with other great TV presenters in
Yes,
the morning.
yes.
And you're all competing for the same get.
But
or
I'm not
competing
trying
for
to
the same
take their job.
Well, I'm not trying to take his job either. He doesn't have the job of President of the United States, and neither do I. At the moment, the person that has it is Donald Trump. I'm trying to take away the job from Donald Trump.
Did you not think Joe Biden could win the nomination?
I don't know whether he can win the nomination. I'm not a prognosticator. I've got to go out there and make my case around this country to the public and say, I think I can do this. Here's why. Here's my experiences in the past. And every candidate has to go and give those examples for themselves.
Nobody's saying, Mayor Bloomberg, meh. They either say, oh, thank God he's getting in, thank God, now I know I'm going to vote for. Or I hear, what the hell is he thinking? Is this a big ego stroke?
Well,
How do you respond to both of those?
The second one, I have the same rights as anybody else. As a matter of fact, I think, Sanders has been an American longer than I have, but I'm the second longest American. Does it take an ego? Yeah, I guess it takes an ego to think that you could do the job. But I look in a mirror and I say, well, could I do the job? Okay, I did this. I have 12 years of experience in City Hall, and I think if you go back today and ask most people about those 12 years, they would say that not me, but the team that I put together made an enormous difference in New York City. And New York City benefited from it and continues to benefit from it today from what we did then.
And that's the secret sauce, the right leadership and the right team, you think?
Somebody once said there's no I in the word team. Mm-hmm. I am not the smartest guy in the world, but I do know how to get people to come together, select them, and get them adjudicate when they have problems and find funding for them and be a sounding board. And then when a decision has to be made, yes, I can make a decision. I know how to do that.
Well, it would be no surprise to you that your fellow candidates are not so glad to see you get in. Elizabeth Warren suggested you're trying to buy the election. Bernie Sanders says, as a billionaire, you can run even the dumbest person on the earth and pay for it. You see the point they're all making.
Yeah, the point they're making is it's
got a lot of money.
okay if they, no, what the point they're making is it's okay if they ask other people for all their money and it will help their careers. Whereas if somebody goes out and makes the money themselves and gives it away, I give an enormous, virtually all my income goes to public health issues and education and the arts and the environment, things that I care about. And I think I could do a lot of good for the country if I could become president. And so using some of those monies to fund the campaign is fine. What
But I
is
don't
true
think we
is,
should
look,
miss the point, Mayor.
Wait a second, time out. My
Yeah.
father made $6,000 the best year of his life. I don't come from money. Nobody gave me a head start. My parents gave me an education in the public school system in Medford, Massachusetts. And they taught me ethics and they taught me hard work. I worked my way through college, and then I worked for 15 years. I got fired. I started a company. The company turned out to be phenomenally successful.
No, and
much
you've
better.
been very successful.
And I give 100% of the money away. What's wrong with all of that? And then I turn and they're criticizing me for it. I don't know. Ask them what they're doing. Why didn't they do that? They had a chance to go out and make a lot of money. And how much of their own money do they put into their campaigns?
But I think the point that they're making, and a lot of people are making, is you're a billionaire who is buying this election. What is your response to that?
I'm not buying any more. I'm doing exactly the same thing they're doing, except that I am using my own money. They're using somebody else's money, and those other people expect something from them. Nobody gives you money if they don't expect something, and I don't want to be bought. I didn't take a dime in 3 different elections when I was mayor of New York City, and when the lobbyists came into City Hall, they went down to the other side of City Hall where the city council was. The lobbyists never came to our side because they know they couldn't buy anything.
Well, because you're not accepting campaign donations as you've
Yes.
laid out so well. It also means that you're not participating in the debates. You can't participate
Well, they
in the
may
debates.
change the rules for all I know.
But right now, they haven't changed the rules, so how will people get a chance to meet you and to know you?
Well, number one, I'm going to run ads, which you just talked about. I'm going to fund the ads.
But all
That's
the ads will be very glowing about you. There's no way anybody can challenge a
Okay, wait a
glowing ad
second.
about you.
I'm here. You're asking me questions. You can ask me anything you want. I can't think. I don't know if they're afraid to have you ask them questions. I'm not afraid to ask you questions. You can ask me anything you want. I don't have to answer it.
Yeah, but isn't part of the debate process, Mayor, a give and take with your fellow candidates?
There's
Isn't
no
it a-
debate. Come on, they're canned things. They practiced yelling at each other. There's no debate whatsoever. I have a lot more debate with the people in the audience or the press when I'm out there and they yell questions at you. There you can have a debate, if you want to call it that way. I don't know what the Democratic Party is going to do. I suspect as it gets down to fewer people, they're probably going to change the rules so that you could participate without some of the restrictions they had.
Would you like to participate in the debates if they change the rules?
If they change the rules, I'd be happy to. And if they don't, that's okay too. It's up to them. They said the Democratic Party sets the rules for the Democratic primary, Republican one for their primaries. I will be happy to participate. I want to run as a Democrat.
I am curious about your strategy because you've entered the race late, as we all know. You're skipping Iowa, New Hampshire, and South Carolina, and Nevada too. How are the voters in those states supposed to feel about that?
I'm going to go to them. I'm going to go to each of those 4 states and try to put together a group and let the press be there and tell them why I'm skipping them. There isn't enough time for me to do that. I didn't enter it before because I didn't think there was a need. I looked at this country and said there is a need. I think that we've got to do something about it. I couldn't look in a mirror if I didn't at least have the guts to go out and try to do it and do it with my own money and do it with my own time and sacrifice with my family and everything else. And so I'm going to go do that.
Let's move on to the President of the United States. Do you think President Trump should be impeached?
I think it's a very serious thing, and I was before opposed to it, but after looking at all the evidence, I think yes. Sad, but yes.
What is the biggest thing that troubles you about him?
He does not seem to understand that he is an elected official whose job it is to work for the public rather than for himself.
Has he done anything or said anything in these last 3 years now that you think that was good? Congratulations, you got that right. Anything come to mind?
I think some of his things make some sense, but the trouble is he can't stop himself from doing them, overdoing them, or doing them in a ways that's dysfunctional. For example, it's not fair that China doesn't allow certain things for us over there that we do allow for them over here. It's not fair that they subsidize some industries. The World Trade Organization would stop some of that. It's not fair that they try to steal intellectual property. And so taking on that fight, yes, I think it's the right fight to take on. The Democrats were there with him, except that they don't want to have him have a win, so no. But the trouble is, he's doing it in a ways that's dysfunctional, that China's never going to cave in. China is going to be a world power. We have to learn how to deal with them. We have to deal with them on things like climate change and trade.
It often does really come down to relationships. I'm curious, what did you think when you saw world leaders gossiping really and mocking the President of the United States?
I think it's fair to say we've lost an enormous amount of respect around the world. We were the country that set the ethical, moral work standards and provided protection so that other countries didn't have to go build their own nuclear arms and do a lot of other things. Sadly, we've lost a lot of that.
I think it also goes without saying he's no fan of yours. He recently said Mini Mike Bloomberg has instructed his third-rate news organization not to investigate him or any Democrat, but to go after President Trump only. Well, you've got a nickname already. What's your response to what
Well,
he
I don't
said?
know that I would accept the nickname. I think people have said to me, how can you investigate yourself? And I said, I don't think you can.
But even your own news reporters have complained. They think it's unfair that they're not allowed to investigate other Democratic candidates because they're bosses in the race.
Just have to learn to live with some things.
Okay.
They get a paycheck, and it comes from the company and from the company that I started, not running at the moment, turned it over to somebody else to do that. But with your paycheck comes some restrictions and responsibilities.
Stop and frisk, you recently apologized for that. Some people are suspicious of the timing of your apology.
The mark of an intelligent, competent person is when they make a mistake, they have the guts to stand up and say, I made a mistake, I'm sorry.
We don't question your belief that you made a mistake. I think the question is the timing that you realize you made the mistake.
Well, nobody asked me about it until I started running for president, so
Okay.
come on.
Are you saying to people that you realize you had made a mistake before, but you just didn't mention it until now?
I think we were overzealous at the time to do it. Our intent was to do anything we could to stop the carnage, the murder rate. And what was surprising is when we stopped doing it a little bit, we thought crime would go up. It didn't. It went down. So, it should have, would have, and could have. I can't help that. But in looking back, made a mistake. I'm sorry. I apologize. Let's go fight the NRA and find other ways to stop the murders and incarceration. Those are things that I'm committed to do. And the more I do that, the better off everybody is.
The next debate is December, and Cory Booker said that it could possibly be, on that debate stage, no one of color, there would be more billionaires in the race than black people. Is that a problem to you?
Well, Cory Booker endorsed me a number of times, and I endorsed Cory Booker a number of times. He's very well spoken. He's got some good ideas. It would be better the more diverse any group is, but the public is out there picking and choosing and narrowing down this field. The truth of the matter is you had a lot of diversity in the candidates, some of whom were very competent. Why they aren't there as you narrowed it down, you have to talk to other people who are experts. I don't know.
Part of the conversation is, here we go, another old white gentleman. Isn't it time for change? Isn't it time for something new?
Yes, it may be, but lots of people can enter. There was no reason, if you wanted to enter and run for president of the United States, you could have done that. But don't complain to me that you're not in the race. It was up to you. And I thought there was a lot of diversity in the group of Democratic aspirants. Entry is not a barrier.
So you're saying if you want diversity, then get in.
That is exactly a good way to phrase it. Thank you very much.
Are you more inclined to select a woman running mate or a person of color?
My criteria is plain and simple the following. I will not, if I get to the point where I can pick a Democratic candidate, a Democratic vice presidential candidate, and remember the party would technically have to approve,
Yes.
but I would never pick, my only criteria is if I drop dead, could the vice president take over and run this country such that my kids and grandkids were safe and had a future. That's the only criteria. And, you can say, well, you need somebody who's going to help you in this state or help you in that state. Vice presidential candidates don't have a big influence on that. And they don't even have an influence in terms of getting votes for themselves. It's the presidential candidate that everybody talks about. And to me, the whole purpose of a vice president is to have somebody that you can say, look, I'm going to go on vacation for 2 weeks. You're the president. You do it. And they don't do that. They don't do that. They send the vice president off to do some ceremonial stuff. But the staff, the president and the president's staff, they stay, they can't give up. They can't pass the reins. They can't delegate.
Are you saying your vice presidential pick would not be ceremonial? You want somebody who could do the job?
Somebody that I think, I would look for a candidate that I think would be better at the job than me. I've always tried to hire people who are smarter than me and who can take over from me and that I can learn from them. And there's lots of female and male people, male candidates out there in my list, in my mind.
Care to share? Are you leaning in any direction?
I think not today. I'll get to
Okay.
the next time,
All right.
okay?
I want to get to a couple of personal issues because you would be the first modern-day single president, but we all know in New York you are not an eligible bachelor. Your significant other, Diana Taylor, is a very accomplished, highly respected, highly admired woman. Would she be our de facto first lady? Is she playing a role in your campaign?
She's playing a role in the campaign, number one. Number two, we've only been living together for 19 years, and I think it's fair, if I can speak for her as well, neither of us have any plans to change.
Living together.
We would.
Do you all think about getting married?
Not a subject I'm going to discuss with you, dear.
Well, I am curious. I didn't know it had been that long. Okay. So you didn't answer.
But
would
it
she-
only seems like half that length of time.
But you didn't answer the question, would she be our de facto first lady?
Oh, yeah, of course. She would do the ceremonial things that Donald Trump's wife does. But I would use I care more about her judgment. I don't always agree with her. Sometimes
Yes.
she's just wrong.
I think she would say the same about you.
She probably would.
Who is the real Mike Bloomberg? I was thinking, you were a Democrat, then you were a Republican, then you were an independent, and now you're a Democrat. Who are you?
I am a social liberal, fiscal moderate who is basically nonpartisan. I grew up as a Democrat in Massachusetts. There are no Republicans. I moved to New York where I was a Democrat. There are no Republicans. I couldn't become mayor on the Democratic line. The Republicans said, well, you can run as a Republican. In New York City, the mayor's job is not a partisan job, so I did. But you could have voted me on a different line. We have a complicated
But don't you
system.
think most of America is in the middle, that most people are centrist?
I do believe that most of the public is in the middle.
What do you think is the biggest misconception about you? You're well known in New York, but not in the
People confuse
country.
me with Brad Pitt all the time, and it's not fair
I
to
knew you would
Brad.
go for a joke. I knew it. But I'm being serious. You're well known in New York. But what is the biggest, for some people who are hearing Michael Bloomberg from the state of New York, what is the biggest misconception about you?
Most people would say, whether they like my views or not, they would say he's at least honest and genuine, doesn't pull any punches, hardworking, probably say smart, but not everybody would agree with that. But I think they'd all say hardworking and honest. And I like people, and I think nobody expected that.
What would your dad, William Henry Bloomberg, say about you today?
I think he would say, my son shook hands one time with David Rockefeller and Jacob Rothschild. Those would be the two magic names for some poor Jewish guy working his way up. The fact that you could someday meet them would be inconceivable. And yet, I knew David Rockefeller very well. He was a very generous guy, gave a lot of money, as does the rest of his family, to help the people in New York and around this country and around the world. Same thing, Rothschild.
I know, but think of what he would think about you today, though. Honestly.
My mother said, don't let it go to your head. That was always her advice. And she was there. She held the Bible when I got sworn in.
Don't let it go to your head.
Don't let it go to your head.
Has it?
No, I mean, I talked to her. She died.
Not
and
even a little bit? It hasn't gone to your head?
I don't think so.
No?
I'd look in the mirror. It's okay. What I like today still is that we started to talk about liking people. Every time I walk by a police officer, I stick my hand out. Thanks for taking care of us. Fire truck stopped. I walk over and reach up to the fire guys. Thanks for taking care of us. Sanitation worker, they stop the truck. If they don't stop the truck and come out over and take the gloves off and shake hands, I'm annoyed. If I go into your building and you're waiting for me there, I first shake hands with the doorman.
I know. I've seen that. I want to talk about being the first Jewish president where anti-Semitism is really high these days.
It sadly is.
It is. How did you tend to address that? deal with that? How does that concern you?
Well, number one, not be ashamed of who I am. Yeah, I'm not a terribly religious person, but I'm very proud of my heritage. One story, my father, one time at the dining room table, was looking at a little booklet that had been sent out of donors to the NAACP. And he had given, I think, $50 or something. And I said to him, why are you giving money to the NAACP? And he said, because discrimination against anybody is discrimination against everybody.
That sounds like a Martin Luther King quote to me.
He would have been very happy to have said that, I'm sure.